And that's the cool thing about healing is you show people what's possible just through showing up in the healing and having the tough conversations and being open to being vulnerable and holding your heart out with a chance that it could be threatened, you know? And so I know it's not easy for everyone. I know some people really struggle with that healing conversation. It was very tough for me, but I looked at myself in the mirror with tears in my eyes and all, and I looked at myself and thought, I get through this. Like, I'm not gonna carry this for the rest of my life.
2, 1, 0.
Hi, and welcome to Stellar Life Podcast. This is your host, Orion, and today I have with me the very cool Joel Brown. From a very young age, he created a wonderful success for himself and shared stages with some of the greatest leaders and luminaries of our time. He was also featured in Think and Grow Rich movie, and he is a master coach and a speaker. In this episode, he shared with us how he attracted his soulmate and had a shift in his life after healing past trauma and doing deep work. We talked about subconscious repatterning, the different type of procrastinators, how to be powerful and successful as a leader in your personal and professional world, and more and more and more. And now, without further ado, on to the show. Hi, Joel. Welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much for taking your time, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
I'm excited too, Orion. I know we can dive into many different things. We had a bit of a conversation before this, and I was like, "Oh, this is good. I like this. I like the direction we can take this."
I like it, and I'm curious. I like being curious. Before we begin our wherever it's going to take us, can you share a little bit about your passion and your life journey, and how did you become the magnetic speaker, teacher, coach that you are today?
Yeah, so I started personal development. I'd say full immersion of personal development when I was 22 years old. I always read books here and there, but I committed to it and went, hey, what would happen if I applied what I learned to my life on as many levels as possible? So I became very much addicted to success, very much obsessed with transformation. And I created a website called Addicted to Success, which attracted a lot of high achiever people because that's the sort of mindset someone has if they're an A type player. And I got caught up in, I'd say, probably about 6 or 7 years of just running hard, you know, to put the uh, pedal to the metal, rubber hits the road, let's go, climb every mountain you can. And I got to a point where I felt like I'd capped out, you know, and so I went on a different journey after that and went into some healing and explored childhood wounds and trauma and got really involved in a lot of the deeper transformational aspects. Then I went on this adventure with God and came to understand God through relationship with him, not religion, but relationship, which is really powerful for me to have that shift in my life. So I've had a very colorful journey over the years, and throughout that, I've learned a lot of coaching tools, frameworks, exercises, techniques. I've created hundreds of different coaching tools. I'm a sort of nerd or a geek when it comes to human behavior. I love studying how the brain works, how humans function, and how our patterns can predict our outcomes in life. You know, I think a lot of people are very much stuck in subconscious patterns that aren't serving them. And so in reality, we're getting results that we're not quite happy with. So I love sitting down with people, understanding how they tick and why they're procrastinating, why they're not thinking big enough, why they're not getting into action, and how to be able to release the things in the past that are holding them back. So hopefully that covered as much ground as possible in a in a nutshell answer.
No, it's beautiful. Yes. Can you share a little bit about healing trauma? And because usually a very strong masculine that is addicted to success is usually very detached from their like deep emotions and even their physical body, and it's very from the neck up. And even though you go to gym and you train and all that, but the the deep emotions, the issues in the tissues, they're being suppressed. So what created that shift from I'm not even going to feel any of my pain, I'm just going to go and achieve and do and do and do, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, there is something here that I need to heal, and I don't feel whole. There is something to heal here.
Yeah. It's such a loaded question. There's so many layers to it,
I
right?
am a very loaded person.
Good, good. We're gonna have a great conversation. Well, look, let's unpack the layers, right? So I'd say first things first. When I was brought into the world, my mom said to me maybe a few years back that the doctor or the OB that she was seeing was going to go on a holiday. So he said, "Hey, I'm going to induce you, and your son will come into the world a week earlier." Right. So if you could imagine, I'm getting rushed into the world, right? And then at the time in Australia, which is where I'm from, my parents had mentioned that there was a massive interest rate uh, crisis. It was like, I think the housing interest rates were at like 17%. I mean, things were quite high. And my parents just started building, and all the houses around them had to shut down. They were going bankrupt. My parents decided, as soon as I came into the world, we're not going to lose this home. We're going to work three times as hard. So they got three jobs. They went from one job to three jobs, and they would take me with them to all the jobs that they were working on. And so I was this little baby, and at like 2 months old is when we start to develop our attachment style, right? How we relate to love and how we understand relationship. And so I was brought into the world, rushed, was around my parents, rushing and working hard. And my mom had postnatal depression. And so every time she would hug on to me, there's this like energetic imprint of anxiousness equals love and connection. And my dad didn't know how to be around my mom when she was like that because he had never learned. And so he would try and be away as often as possible. So I would need the love from my father, and he was dismissive. And all of this was something that they didn't quite understand. They were just trying to do life, like all of us. We're trying the best we can with what we have. And then, my mom came good a few years after that. My dad sort of balanced out a bit, but my imprint and my attachment, my blueprint from childhood was very much learning that anxiousness equals love, and that I needed to complete a loop, to close a loop and get connection from a dismissive figure, right? Even though I'm heterosexual, I'm looking for in partners after that somebody that represents as an avatar or an association to a dismissive type of behavior. I equaled that in my subconscious to somebody that I need love from. And so I continued this journey at a young age, at 13, 14, 16, 18, 21, 25, constantly attracting women that were dismissive avoidant. So I got to a point when I was 29, and I really felt the brunt of it. I really felt like, man, why am I doing this? Why do I keep attracting women like this? It's not fair to say it's that person's fault. I keep attracting it, right? So I ended up seeing a relationship coach, and she helped me to identify that I had the anxious attach and anxious preoccupied patterns. And so my process was actually going through a forgiveness conversation with my father. And it was crazy because initially my father was like, oh, apprehensive to the conversation. He's like, we don't need to do that. And I was like, no, this is really important to me. And when I opened up about the fact that I felt like if he was to die today, that I wouldn't feel complete in my relationship with him, like that really made me tear up.
Oh god, you gave me goosebumps right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it was big because we modeled so much of our world. I don't mean just like other people. I mean the way that we look at money, the way that we look at business, the way that we look at business partnerships, the way that we look at ourselves is modeled so heavily off our figures in life that caregivers or parents or teachers or coaches, like somebody that you had an early experience with, where you're just trying to get answers from them. It's like, how do I do life? Like, I need reference points right now. What do I do? So I like to work through subconscious repatterning. I like to look at the childhood blueprint. It's taught me so much in my own experience on what's important, what to look at in my clients. You know, I've worked with over 12,000 people in many different capacities in events, conferences, retreats, summits, one-on-one group coaching, and so on. And after a while, you start to just see, like, you see through it. You see through people's posing to be like all famous and like the overcompensationary success that a lot of people come from is I got to prove everybody, which is what I used to do. And I just see the childhood wounds. I see it. I'm like, man, you got some love to reconcile with here. You've got conversations to have. And so much of the world, you and I included, of course, have like fragments of things that we get to heal.
Yeah. So when you had that conversation with your dad, you healed the whole lineage probably epigenetically, and you healed him too. What was it like to have the conversation with him?
Well, initially my coach at the time, Thais Gibson, she runs an awesome YouTube channel. Actually, she's got an academy called the Personal Development School. I came across her videos on YouTube because I was just sick of feeling anxious. I was losing weight. I felt so consumed.
With all your success, and you were becoming really successful, yet you're feeling all that.
Yeah, speaking on stages with some of the biggest people in the world, featuring documentary films with people like Tony Robbins, Richard Branson, the Dalai Lama, like all these status things and credibility things. But it didn't matter. A lot of the success that I had achieved was because I connected with the right people. I put in the work. I learned the skills. I was consistent. Anyone can do it. Like, I'm this, guy from Perth, Western Australia, this quiet little town, and I got out there and made it happen. It's not to say that there's something mythical and mystical about me. I committed to it. I
There
stuck
is
to it.
some
I had a
mythical,
vision.
mystical about you, but we'll get to that later.
There's definitely purpose, implanted. Like, God definitely planted seeds, and so I showed up to the watering of those seeds. But I would say that I definitely felt like I had something to prove at a young age because I really wanted that love from my father, and so I think for the most part, achieving things meant that I was going to get the pat on the back or the acknowledgement, the validation, the words of affirmation, which still are very important to everyone. Everyone wants to feel seen, heard, and loved and understood. So once I reconciled with my father, it was really powerful because he had shared with me that he had only really felt love and hugged his father when his father was on his deathbed. And so it really put things into perspective for me. I was like, man, I said to him, I said, you've come such a long way. I didn't look at it like that until we had the conversation. I was like, you've come such a long way compared to where you came from. Like, he was scared of his father at times, and he didn't feel like he had the warmth there. And so for my father, it was hard for him to say I love you. It was like rare, but now it's more common, and my dad was not as supportive with the personal development stuff. He's like, oh, I don't do that stuff. That's stuff that your mom does. But then once I had this healing conversation with him, he decided to go and book tickets, and he came in and said to my mom, who my mom was so frustrated because he never wanted to travel. And he said, "Hey, I've booked tickets. We're gonna go see Joel at his event." So my mom and my dad came to my transformational event. My dad got up on stage. We had breakthroughs. He teared up. The women at the event that were going through breakthroughs, they looked at my dad as like a father figure. He was like able to look at them and see that the healing that's needed. So it was such a healing thing in the dynamic of my family, but also it healed aspects of my brother's relationship with my father, and it improved my parents' marriage and understanding of each other. It had this ripple effect, and that's the cool thing about healing is you show people what's possible just through showing up in the healing and having the tough conversations and being open to being vulnerable and holding your heart out with a chance that it could be threatened. And so I know it's not easy for everyone. I know some people really struggle with that healing conversation. It was very tough for me, but I looked at myself in the mirror with tears in my eyes and all, and I looked at myself and thought, I get to get through this. Like, I'm not gonna carry this for the rest of my life. This is so painful and frustrating, and this isn't who I wanted to be. When I thought of my self concept, self image of me being someone that would be a powerful leader in this world, to one day be a father when I have children and show up for them in a healed way, even though I'm still imperfect, I knew that it required from me to take a leap and to show courage and to be the first person in my family to step in, because if I didn't, who would do it? You know, and if you're listening right now, maybe that's a question you get to ask yourself too. Am I going to wait for someone else to go first?
Nice. Nice. And Dr. Wayne Dyer says when you change, the world around you change. A lot of time we look for other people to heal for us to heal, but it's never like that. It comes from the inside, and it comes from stepping up and taking that courage to have that conversation with your father that had such incredible ripple effects, not only for your father but also for your mother and the people at your event and you as a person completely. So what changed in you after that conversation? Who did you become?
I think it would be unfair to say that everything would just turn on a dime and it was amazing. I don't think it'd be right to say that. It's not a linear process, right? Even with me, when I had my experience with God and then like went through that process,
Tell me about that.
yeah, for sure. I mean, no one becomes a saint overnight, right? Like, you have a process of undoing things and you have a process of like understanding things one bit at a time.
I think no one is a saint, period.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not. We're fallen. We're imperfect.
I used to put people on pedestals. Like, I did all the Tony Robbins seminars, and I rubbed shoulders with some great people. And I used to put like they were like the big people, and I was that small person. And now I'm just like, nah. People are people. They are great people. They're doing a humongous service to the world, and they're flawed. And it's okay to love and accept them the way they are, and love and accept myself the way I am with all of me, because this is me. I'm trying to be better every day, and like you said, it's not a straight straight line up the mountain. It's very complicated and wavy, and especially for the feminine, it's very very wavy, and it's all wonderful and magnificent.
Yeah, a little bit of the chaos. We all need a little bit of that order, and we need a little bit of that chaos. Like, that's what keeps life interesting, is the fluctuation of in and out and up and down. And yeah, I mean, you're married, right? You have a partner, and you have a child, and so you know that there's going to be certain things in your life that you're going to be tested with, just like me with my wife, where there's an opportunity for growth, and it's opening up and being vulnerable and sharing things that you wouldn't usually share, and even sharing scary things about yourself. You know, that's been a big thing for me. I've admitted things to my wife about insecurities that I have. I've admitted things where I'm like, you know what, I think I act like this because of this, and this is what I really need. And it's all it's ever done is made us closer. You know, it's only ever created a deeper connection and more powerful. And I think so many of us are so scared to be rejected. We're so scared to be looked at in a way that doesn't equate to who we'd like ourselves to be. But as much as we put other people on pedestals, I think sometimes we pedestal ourselves too much. And we've got to have more grace for ourselves as well.
Nice, I love that. um so you had some kind of new connection with God. What was that about?
You know, I grew up in the church. For me, I never had church hurt. You know, some people have church hurt. It's like, oh, I had such a terrible experience. I never want to go back. I never had that. I had good community around me. My mom, pretty much for most of my early childhood, says, you know, Jesus loves you. God created you for a reason. You know, so I had nothing but love poured into me from that perspective. I felt a little bit of the restriction of like committing to the religious rituals and the practices at times, and I was like, okay, I'm sort of over this, especially as a teenager. Once I got to 13, I was like, I need to go and work out how I want to live my life, and my parents eased off and let me do that. They weren't trying to control me, which I think was the best decision. I went off and got involved in all sorts of things, drugs and alcohol and sleeping around and partying. And, I was diving into lots of different belief systems, everything from like all the Eastern esoteric stuff to studying the Quran and Islam, hanging out with my Jewish friends, talking about Judaism, and like just bouncing around, and living in Bali, hanging around Hindus, going to Buddhist temples and hanging out in India, living there for 6 months and doing all the ceremonies. And I was around all of the different cultures. I traveled to 42 different countries. Yeah, and so I got to a point where I was speaking on big stages, big podcasts. I was getting offered book deals and all that, and I felt empty. I felt like there's some sort of void that isn't being filled. And no matter how much success I achieved, no matter how much money I had, or fancy luxury rental cars I had jumped in, or penthouses I went to, or parties, or shoulders I rubbed with, there was just a gap in my heart. I was gaping, and I was like, for a long time, I thought maybe it was a partner, like a relationship with a romantic connection, and so tried that, and it wasn't there. It still wasn't there. I still felt it. And I went on a trip one day to Tulum, Mexico, and there was a lady there. I was a bachelor trip with my friend, and the bachelorettes were there as well in Tulum, and so we'd catch up sometimes during lunchtime. And one day she just asked me, she's like, "Do you know Jesus?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know who Jesus is. I know who Christianity is. I grew up around it." And she's like, "Yeah, but do you have a relationship with God? Like, do you understand God as a relational being, or is it religious?" And I was like, "I've never looked at it like that. What's a relational being? What's a relationship?" And she's like, going directly to him, like actually having like your prayer life with God, learning through what Christ taught about how we can actually connect with God, and that God has a greater plan for us in this world, that we aren't doomed. Like, it's not like we're just living here and we got to live in a corrupt society and that there's evil lurking around the corner, that God has great plans for us, to bring us back to who he created us to be, to live in our purpose, and to teach us about love and truth and liberty. And so it was such a game changer for me, because I realized, I'm like, yeah, I haven't prayed for the longest time, and so I started bringing that back in. And it's hard to explain on a personal level what happens, but you start to look at the world in a different way. You actually start to understand that history is his story. It's like God's story is playing out, and we're a part of it, whether we like it or not. We get to choose, how do we want to relate to God, because God is who he is. Whereas if we're like living in all the constructs of what the world is telling us, and like these like institutions of how we're supposed to do things, instead of going and having our personal relationship and experience, and we're never going to feel the fullness of what's possible. So it was cool to come back to like really realize it doesn't have to be religion, because religion demands obedience to God. Whereas I believe the gospel of what Christ was teaching us is that the gospel inspires, because we want to have a deeper relationship with God. There's such a difference to that. I was like, wow, this is really cool. So that's helped me a lot in my just deepening connection with people, deepening the understanding of what's unfolding. I felt this deep sense of peace that washed over me. I felt my ways, my thinking just transform, just move in a different direction that's more fruitful, that's more centered around love. And I'm not perfect, I have my days, but I really felt what it meant to be like washed, washed to that. And so I decided to be baptized. It's interesting because you see like Russell Brand recently got baptized. There's like a lot of people that are having these experiences now. And I truly believe that there is like a rising movement in the world that's getting sick of materialism. And I do believe that they're wanting God.
Yeah, I actually sense that too. We all have our different expression of connecting with him. For me, one of the, because I always felt connected, actually, even when I traveled the world on my own. And I always think, thank God, the angels, and I felt the presence that is guiding me. And I think the strongest time I felt it was when I spent some time in the Oneness University in India, and we had a God meditation where you go into a room. It's a beautiful room, and and then God is sitting there, and you're kind of sitting in God's lap and getting a hug from God. And that was a powerful experience, because we can talk about God all day long, and it's it's something that you need to feel, just like love. Like, you can't explain love, but you can sense love. I feel like that's the same way with God, and with everything that goes in this corrupted world. Sometimes I personally feel like I'm in and out with my relationship, where I'm in fear, when I'm not trusting.
Instead of faith. Yeah,
Yeah, it's mostly when I'm in fear. And that's actually the perfect time to actually go back to that amazing, beautiful connection, and sense it to my core. So thanks for that reminder.
that's so good. I'm really happy. And God, God's not forceful. That's the thing. I think that man has created institutions that can be forceful and self-righteous, but God's not. And we get to choose him. That's what relationship means, is that we get to choose to come to him. And then I think opening yourself up to the love of God is so healing. I think a lot of people are denying themselves of that because they have a construct, or they've had a really terrible experience with somebody that was all like righteous and religious, right? So it's like you come into this world alone. We need God. It's like we need him. He is our lifeline in all of this. And I think a lot of the time we try and work so much of it out ourselves with all the tools, and there's so much that we can do with it, and then there's beyond that, which is transcending self-actualization, which is coming to God and experiencing that on a spiritual level is just next level.
Yeah, I actually had also a more recent psychedelic experience where I was in the space of non-duality, completely, and that just strengthened for me the idea that God is love, and love is the key. Love is the key for everything in this world. If we just pour more love on everybody, and on on all of our fears and traumas, and things and setbacks, if we just put some more love into everything, we're going to be more expanding into co-creation with the divine, because that's what it is. It's love. It's not fear. It's love.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he created us for that. Have you ever seen the Map of Consciousness by David Hawkins? Yeah, it's called the Map of Consciousness. It's so you have like acceptance, understanding, love, joy, peace, bliss, and then below that at the bottom under acceptance is neutrality, and then you have fear and or you have courage, and you have like fear and apathy and shame and guilt and blame. I truly believe that God created us to be in those upper brackets, in acceptance, understanding, love, joy, peace. He created us for that. That's creation. We get to be weapons of mass creation, right? Instead, we're in this world, we're looking for weapons of mass destruction. We're trying to live in stagnation or destruction to try and maintain power and control. And God's like, no, I created you for so much more than that. And it's unfortunate because there's always going to be people in this world that are getting the short end of the stick until we get to experience what it's like to be in God's kingdom, right? We're trying our best with all our different like governmental ways of doing like democracy, and everyone is pushing for different systems. I want socialism, I want humanism, I want all these, systems. We're trying to get it right. And so I would say, the more that we can come to God, the more that we can go into those brackets and actually live more in accordance and in rhythm with co-creation with him, and not in destruction and stagnation.
Right. I love that. And I want to move into something more that is probably linked emotionally to that connection and healing, but something that is present in my life, which is procrastination. Sometimes I
That's
don't.
present in everyone's life.
Sometimes I don't do the things I want to do or say I'm going to do, and there is lack of discipline. So maybe we can talk a little bit about discipline and procrastination, and how we can improve on that.
Yeah, well, this is my jam. I specialize in repatterning procrastination. It's something that I committed to about 9 years ago now. I've trained tens of thousands of people around the world on how to repattern their subconscious programs around their procrastination type. You can take a quiz. I've got it up online. It takes like 3 minutes. It's super quick. It's doquiz.com. Don't procrastinate. Go and do it. If you're listening, go to doquiz.com. It's nice and easy. And it's just yes, no answers. It's really easy. And it's going to come back with the result, and it's going to share with you the type of procrastinator you are. We have 6 different types. Okay. And I can share it and break it down. I don't want you to assume, because sometimes people say, "Oh, I think I'm that type." But then when you do the quiz, you find out you're actually more another type. Yeah, because everyone experiences these patterns, but we're all dominant in one of the types more than the others. Okay. So the first type is the obsessive idealist. The obsessive idealist is who we've been talking about, the perfectionist, the high achiever. They have this all or nothing type of personality. They wait until the last minute till the adrenaline rush kicks in, and they can have very black and white thinking a lot of the time. So that's the obsessive idealist. There's good and negative things that can happen around these types. So one of the things about the obsessive idealists is they can be really great at putting in the work and focus and so on, but on the back end of it, there's a lot of exhaustion, burnout. There's a lot of not feeling good enough. There's a lot of beating themselves up and judging themselves and judging others, right? So there's the obsessive idealist. The second type is the stargazer. The stargazer is somebody who is very good with their visions and their ideas. They can write out really great goals. They can talk big game and promote it, do it well. But on the back end, they end up jumping ship a lot. They move from one shiny object to another. Okay, they're not grounded in strategy, and so that becomes their procrastination struggle. The next type is the dreadhead. That sounds pretty intense. The dreadhead tends to turtle back in, and they're very fearful of stepping too far outside of their comfort zone. Right? They want to achieve big things. They truly believe that they want it, and they really love learning and all those things, but they end up getting caught up and enthralled in the negative thinking patterns, and they spiral back into safety and comfort. Okay. Then we have the next type, which is the diversion junkie. The diversion junkie likes to chase entertaining distractions when things are coming to a head. So they start to do some work, but then they end up distracting themselves a lot. And a lot of people are moving into these patterns because we're being trained through social media to like scroll, scroll, scroll. That short-term thinking is like big. Everyone's looking at 3-second videos, 5-second videos now. So it's sort of like junk food for the brain that we keep living on. And so instead of committing to the responsibilities, instead of having structure, instead of prioritizing what are the most important tasks, they end up hopping around a lot to distractions, entertainment, drinking, gambling, Netflix binging, all of those things that have nothing to do with what they get to do, right? Then the next type is a radical defiant. The radical defiant is very rebellious against everyone and everything. They try to strong arm others a lot to be able to get their way. Very small amount of people in this world are radical defiant. It's a very small percentage of the population, but it can be very much a hindrance on somebody's growth if they have this. And they tend to believe it's a dog eat dog world, and they're just in it for themselves a lot of the time to try and make a way. And the truth is, they haven't felt supported at a young age, and so they've learned to try and be in self-preservation a lot. And this keeps them from being able to actually network and connect with others and grow together. They don't believe that it's possible. And so really working on the repatterning around love and connection, and also being graceful in yourself are huge shifts that get to be created for the radical defiant. And then the last type, which is the sixth type, is the angry altruist. Okay, so the angry altruist tends to be more of the people pleaser type. They give and give and give so much and expect giving in return. And when they don't get it, they get resentful. They get angry and frustrated. They put themselves last. They tend to overwork for everybody else. And they also get really down on themselves if people don't think highly of them, right? They don't like to be seen as someone that's lazy. So they work a lot to try and prove themselves. And they think their value is in giving all the time to everybody else. So they're too altruistic, right? We all have like narcissism and altruism. Everyone goes like fluctuates in and out of that spectrum. But when you're too much on that end all the time, it comes at a consequence. You end up putting yourself out exhausting yourself, getting behind, not doing anything for you, and your ventures and your business has a and your finances have a very big negative impact because of this, and your health. So they're the six types. I would say take the quiz, find out which type you are. You get a PDF report. It's free. You just get that. It's going to break down how to be able to repattern. And then I have my Mind Strong Academy where you can come in and learn how to actually repattern it. I have weekly coaching, live calls on there. It's super affordable. It's $47. It's 7-day free trial, so you can just jump in for free. You got nothing to lose. So yeah, it's been a game changer for so many people.
That's incredible. And when I was listening to you talk, I can see myself in all the types. I'm in trouble because I mean, I guess like with any archetypes, we embody all of them, um, to some degree, right?
Yeah, there's a dominant tendency to lean towards one of the types. That when I created this system 9 years ago and I've tested it, we've like differentiated them enough to show where your strong leanings are. Sometimes people will heal in one and then they'll sort of find that they're leaning into another for a bit. And it's just this process of like healing one to another till you balance it out. The key is to come back into your center, right? Because procrastination, a lot of people think it's like, oh, I'm lazy. It's not. It's not about laziness. There's something deeper going on in your subconscious. It's more to do with emotional management, not time management. Time management is only a very small part of it. People don't understand that because your emotions is the thing you're getting caught up in before you even look at the time itself.
Right? Yes. Because when you're in your flow, in your zone, you don't time doesn't matter, and you work and you don't even feel it. It is all emotional at the end of the day. Even discipline is emotional. And so, what are some exercises or steps that are universal for all the archetypes that someone can take?
Yeah, that's good. That's a good question. We have lots of different. I have about 10 modules for each type. If you come into the My Strong Academy, I've made them like 3 to 7 minutes each, so they're nice and easy to do. I've intentionally not made them super long, which will help you to repattern, like go against it and go the other way and break the cycle of these patterns that you're in. But universal exercises that anyone can do, no matter what their type is. The number one thing, if I could class it as like really important, is getting really clear on what your priorities are. Okay. So, we hear this word a lot, strategy. Strategy just means priorities. That's what it is. It's like, hey, if I work out the sequence of how I must do things in what order, that's strategy. So you need a strategy for your life because if you don't have a strategy, you're going to bounce around like a pinball in a pinball machine, just being moved around by your emotions with no anchor holding you in the place you need to be in or no sail to let your ship move, right? Your boat to move. So the key is to sit down and write down. Maybe you have a list. This is the obsessive idealist will probably end up with 20 or 30 things on a to-do list. That's like pretty normal for an obsessive idealist because they think they could do everything and all things. The dreadhead might write one thing down. So there's a difference between the types, right? So I'd say write down a few things. Okay. Your key is even if you start off writing down 5, 6, 7 things, 8 things, I want you to sit down with it. You might write it down, go have like a tea or a drink of water or whatever, or go breathe some fresh air and come back to that. So you're looking at it with a fresh perspective and sit down and close your eyes and really connect with which out of the list are my top three and in what order. Write down number one and circle it. Write down number two and circle it. Write down number three and circle it. So you have a very defined list of things that you get to commit to. And not only that, I want you to like close your eyes and really connect with it and play it out in your mind. It doesn't have to be long. It could be a quick minute. Play it out through your mind, run through it, seeing yourself committing to that and following through and seeing the benefits that come from it, feeling the benefit of committing to it. Because what you're doing is you're inputting a command. People use ChatGPT nowadays, right? And they put in prompts, tell ChatGPT what to do, but they don't tell their own brain what to do. They're constantly trying to put things on social media, tell everybody else what to do. You got to train your brain and give it commands and prompts. Yeah.
I think that the hardest thing to do is to sit and think.
Yeah. Well, I depend if someone's an overthinker, that's all they do. They don't even get into action.
No, I mean, like, it's very easy to okay, overthinking, that's not what I mean. I mean, like, thinking about your thinking. That's the hardest thing. It's so easy to just listen to someone like you tell me what to do, or get caught up in my own mind. But I do that sometimes where I sit and I'm thinking about my thinking, and that's when I'm the most productive ever. It usually happens in the middle of the night for me. Like, I'll wake up at 3 a.m. and I'll start journaling, because it's quiet and nobody needs me, and I can just be.
Yeah. Well, you're organizing your thinking is what you're doing, right? You're allowing yourself to be able to vent out and then you organize it. What's most important? Where do I put it? What am I going to do with this? What's going to come from this? Those are all really important questions you get to ask yourself. And when you sit down and write out the list and you actually connect with it, feeling into the benefit is training your brain because your subconscious learns through imagery that you feed it. So you can close your eyes and come up with images. You don't need to see it on a screen. God's created an incredible brain for us. We can close our eyes and think of the most epic thing that maybe not even AI can create just yet. It's getting pretty close. But we close our eyes and just imagine that like thing that's going to come from it in detail, feel into it. What's it going to feel like? What you're doing is you're training your subconscious through imagery, through emotions and feeling. And then the next key and the final thing that's the most important that seals the deal is repetition. Okay. If you want to train your subconscious, imagery, feeling, and repetition has to be consistent. If you truly want to train the neural pathways in your brain, you must commit to at least 21 days. 21 days is when you start to see a big behavior shift. If you commit for 60 days, it's part of your being. It's your identity because our identity is shaped by our beliefs and our habits. Our values and our beliefs drive every decision we make, and our beliefs and our habits shape our identity. It's really important to know that and to actually start to see, hey, man, I've got a supercomputer in my head that God's given me and an incredible body and a nervous system, which is like a highway of emotions that can run up and down and communicate back and forth. Why would I not learn how to tap into this thing and upgrade my way of thinking and my way of being? Why would I not do that? Right. So I'm really big on hacking the system. I'm hacking the system on every level. Like, how do we hack what's going on in the world and come out of the systems that aren't beneficial for us? How do I hack my business and have better strategies and set up things that can help us automate? How do I hack my brain? Like, what's the best way I can support it? How do I hack my body? Fasting is really powerful. Maybe I'm going to start fasting and commit to that. And then hacking your mind. Like, there's someone out there that is committed to way longer than you, and there are, as Tony Robbins says, decades of being compounded into days in a book. Why would you not read that? So there's so many different ways we can hack, right? And I think a lot of people are consuming way too much, like sitting and watching everybody else. They're like on the sidelines in panic, going back and forth, but they're not moving any. They're not progressing.
You want to be the content creator. You don't want to be the one that consume it.
Yeah, don't be ruled by the robots.
To be fair, like, everything on social media is made to be extremely addictive. All those, so how do you have the willpower to say no and get less distracted?
Well, my thing that works so far for me is, a lot of my business is on my social media and on my phone. So it's not like I'm just going to, delete everything, but putting it on an airplane mode and then putting my phone away, creating buffers is really important. If there's ways you can create hurdles between your distractions, it's going to help you a lot. My friend James Clear, he wrote the book Atomic Habits. He talks about this.
I need to put mine in a Faraday cage inside a tombstone, inside a mountain, inside on an island, surrounded by crocodiles, and then I won't touch it.
I love it. Yeah, see, and that's the thing. Well, it's good that you know that that's how much you look at it. And so the key is your struggles are different to mine just as much as anybody else's. So you've got to really look at it and go, hey, how aggressive do I get to be with myself until I come out of those loops? I think the perfect example is if anyone here is listening, or even you, if you ever gone into cycles where you're drinking alcohol, right? That's just one example. Or it could be unhealthy eating.
See, like that's not a problem for me. I don't drink alcohol. For me, it's not even interesting.
Yeah, well, for some people it is, right? So what it is they will like, let's say they're like, I'm not drinking, and they'll go for a while, and then they go out one night and they drink, and then all of a sudden it's like week after week they're finding, well, I drank on Saturday, I can drink on Wednesday. And then next thing, oh, I drank on Wednesday, I can drink Saturday and Sunday or Friday night. And then they just go back into like a revolving door. It's not until you come out of the revolving door until you realize, like, whoa, I don't actually like being in this. I actually think I perform better outside of it. And so what we do sometimes is we get into the revolving door with our phones and our social media. And it's not until we can take a break from it and get away from it to realize and see the behaviors that were happening and the results that it was bringing. And we get results either way. It's either you don't like the results or you do like the results. Either way, you're getting some form of result. So you get to look at it. You made a really good point before, talking about like thinking about thinking. I interviewed Dr. Joe Dispenza on my podcast, and one of the really profound things he said that really just sent chills down my spine is he said, maybe we're just really poor observers. And I was like, oh, that's so true. Because if we actually sit back and give ourselves time, not being distracted or pulverized by the news and the media, all the fake news stuff and all the propaganda and all the things, like just come out of it and sit down with it and be like, what's going on here? If I was to look at it, observe it, take it, like zoom out and take a bird's eye view. You could go macro, micro, zoom out, nano, wherever you want to look at it, go in and out of it and like observe it on a few different angles and look at it and be like, is this going to be beneficial? If I continue down this path, is this going to be beneficial for me? How is this helping me to reach my vision or my goals? If I don't have a clear vision mapped out, right? I'm very big on having a vision. It's the story of the successes in my life is I casted a 10-year vision 15 years ago.
Do you do a mind map or do you go with meditation?
Well, I write it down on many different levels. Yeah, there's many different like levels to it. I've hybrided models together in my vision training for it, but I truly believe that if I don't have a big, clear vision that excites me, that inspires me, that I'm aligned to, that my values are injected in, that makes sense to me, that I've like gotten clear on the skills and the beliefs and the habits and the values that must be in it, then someone else will come along and project a small-minded vision on me, and I will adopt it because I don't have a big and powerful enough a vision to see that my vision is my vision for my lane and I'm sticking to it. Most people are adopting other people's visions.
Or it's almost like you can see you'll end up seeing your vision in other people. It's almost like God gave you an idea and a gift. If you don't do it, He will just give it to someone else that wants it more.
Yeah, and regret's a huge thing to have to bear on your shoulders. It sucks. You know, I've definitely experienced that in my younger age. I take more action now, but I turn around and like, oh man, I could have taken advantage of that moment and really stepped in. And it's our beliefs, isn't it? It's our beliefs of not feeling worthy enough, not good enough, or we're just caught up in some other idea that is just distracting us. You know, sometimes some ideas are dressed up nice and neat and they look all fancy with a bow tied on it, but it could lead to a path of destruction. So it is good to be an observer about life.
To be respectful of your time, I have two more questions. One is, what are your three top tips to living a stellar life?
To live a stellar life. Well, I would say that you've got to have a vision, as we are just talking about. You get to have a vision in place that's yours, that you get to own, that excites you, that inspires you. If my social media scrolling inspires me more than my vision, I get to go back to the drawing board, because then my decisions in life and my inspirations are dictated based off an external thing that's constantly moving and flux and flimsum. It's not mine, you know, it's somebody else's. And so I'm not really going to be living in the fullness of who God's created me to be. So I'd say that's first things first, have that vision. Second thing is forgiveness. Really sit down. Who do I get to forgive? thinking about maybe the things that you expected from a mother, father, brother, sister, ex-partner, or even current partner or best friend or whoever, we get to reconcile in our subconscious, right? So writing down a forgiveness letter is going to be so key for you, and forgiving yourself, because so often we beat ourselves up. Where have we gone very hard and with no grace on ourselves? Make sure that you sit down with that and write it out. Dear Orion, I'm sorry. I forgive you for the times where you were beating yourself up because you didn't show up in this, this, and this. I forgive you for the time where, you played small and you didn't step in. We get to do this for ourselves too, right? It might sound a bit silly to some people, but it's very freeing, because it puts into perspective that so often we're not on our own team. And uh, somebody that is on their own team is a very hard person to beat. Every part of me is on my team. I'm very clear on where I'm going. I'm very clear on why I'm doing it. I am constantly learning how to do it better and improving and tweaking. And I'm seeking often what comes next. What do we get to do along the way? And what do we get to recalibrate, tweak, change, improve? I'm a very hard person to beat because of that, right? It's not some like I'm gifted with favor on every level. It's like I've shown up and done the work, and I'm gifted too. And everyone is gifted. So that's the third thing I'd say, is understanding that you're here for a real reason. God placed value on your heart. You aren't just dancing with your DNA. You didn't come from a salamander or popped out of nowhere. You are brought into this world from non-existence into existence, from the infinite into the finite, in this very precious amount of time, to do something incredible, to be in your full expression, to give God the glory, but also to be able to fulfill and create a ripple effect of what's possible in humanity too. Why would you not step into that? So remembering the importance of that is something that can absolutely transform the way that you view the world, and transform the way you even look at time, and highlights the importance of the healing that gets to take place within yourself. So you let go of the boulder that's holding you back here, instead of always thinking it's about adding all these things on top. Sometimes it's about letting go.
Wow, there was so much to unpack just in the last few sentences, and it was beautiful. And I have so many more questions and so much more to share, but our time has come to an end. So thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm sure other people did too. So where can people find you, reach out, and get your courses?
Yeah, for sure. At the moment, I'm running a coaching certification program. So if anybody has listened and thought, wow, I want to learn these coaching tools from Joel, I want to break through my inner limitations and become confident as a coach, learn how to craft my message, how to be able to create content, how to be able to create undeniable offers, get leads, enroll people into your coaching business, and create freedom in your life, then you can go to influentialcoach.com and apply. We have seasonal programs we launch, group programs, and I've had almost 400 coaches that have graduated through that over the years. It's an incredible program. It's 32 trainings with me, and you become a whole new person coming through that program. It's very powerful. And you get to create a business of coaching that allows you to have the ability to work from anywhere in the world, which is really cool. So there's that. And you can go to I am Joel Brown on Instagram, and you can go to Mind Strong Academy if you want to be able to work through your procrastination patterns, come out of the systems of the world, break free from this matrix construct that we live in, and live a life of abundance and freedom. So yeah. And the Addicted to Success podcast. I got another podcast coming out soon as well. So yeah, there's a lot of things. There's a podcast I got called The Unknown God, which is really cool. It's a podcast about God for people that don't like church. So that's been really popular. We've had a lot of downloads on that recently.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Joel. And thank you, listeners. Remember to own your vision, forgive yourself and others, have clarity for yourself and for your life, because you are here for a reason. Let go of what is not serving you and have a stellar life. This is Orion. Till next time.